The size of an organization is one of the key elements to understand whether this organization will be innovative and successful. But how can we determine what is the right size for an organization to be successful? Some will say small, agile organization, entrepreneurial organization, these can lead to real discontinuous innovations. But others may actually argue that a large organization with strong, potent R&D capabilities can create more meaningful innovations. And is it only about the size? Or we should also investigate the type of organization, the structure of the organization, the protocols, the rules, the way of management within the organization. Should we also consider whether an organization is only focused on a domestic market, or it is an international organization with innovations developed in all the markets where the organization is working? So this is the topic of this video lecture. We will understand what is the most appropriate way to organize our company to promote innovation. So we will discuss about the size, we will discuss about centralization versus decentralization, we will also discuss about management, structure, management, organogram that can foster more innovation in the firm. Besides, we will also see some examples from Xerox, from Boeing, from other companies on new innovation. How these companies, Xerox, Boeing, 3M and so on, they were able to define the optimal organization to promote innovations. So without further ado, let's now move on to this video lecture. We know that among the different elements that can impact the level of innovation of an organization, for sure, the structure and the size are very crucial, very important. However, what is really challenging is to know what is the most appropriate size and whether there is only one way to organize for innovations, or whether we can actually find multiple ways to create an innovative organization. It's quite interesting that a prominent scholar, Schumpeter, in the 40s challenged what was back in the days dominant ideas. So back in the days with dominant ideas, what was that big companies are actually against innovations. So in that period of time, the first decades of the 20th century, this is the time of antitrust legislation. So the first antitrust legislation, which had as an objective to avoid to have very big companies basically dominating the market. And Schumpeter argues something that was to an extent opposite to the conventional wisdom of a time. So he pointed out that actually large firms can be better at innovating. One reason is that capital markets are not perfect, and so it's easier for large firms to get financing for the new innovations. The second reason is that since large firms have large revenues, so then it's easier for them to spread the cost of R&D on the larger sales turnover of the organization. And it's not only these two factors. So other factors that we can consider in favor of large organization to be innovative is economy of scale, which is a concept we already analyzed. So the fact that the cost per unit will decrease as long as our volume produced will increase. And learning effect. Learning effect is based on the concept of a learning curve, meaning that the more your people, the more your staff learn about a job, the easier it will be for them to become efficient and effective at their job. And additionally, large companies can take on more challenging projects compared to smaller companies. So they can, they can face the risk more than smaller companies, and the consequences will be lower than in smaller companies. So if these are some of the reasons to believe that innovation will be nurtured more in larger companies, we also need to see that there are disadvantages against bigger companies. One big problem is what we define as inertia. So what is the inertia is that in a large organization, there are more procedures, there are more rules, everything is to an extent more complicated to make it happen for people. And so then people will be discouraged to do things, to initiate new projects, because they will feel the burden of a bureaucracy, of the rules, and so on. At the same time, in larger organizations, it's also more difficult to control people. So in a small organization, you can set up this more like interconnected environment. Remember also the role of tacit knowledge and social interaction to steer innovation. So you can have all of this in a small organization. It's so much more difficult to achieve this in a larger organization. There are examples of this. One example is, for instance, Xerox. Xerox was very successful company, and it fell into what we define as the Iracus paradox. This comes from the Greek mythology, and because Iracus created basically a sort of like an aircraft, a primordial aircraft, but then as he flew too close to the sun, and then everything collapsed, and then he fell down from the sky to finally die. So the paradox is that some companies that are very successful, maybe at innovating, at introducing new technologies, but then they are not able, due to inertia, due to bureaucracy, due to the lack of exchange, tacit knowledge sharing, and so on, they're not able to keep up compared to other new entrants in the market that might be more agile. This is the case of Xerox, that in the mid-70s faced these new entrants to the market from Japan that basically cannibalized their market, because Xerox was too big, too slow, and was not able to win against these new competitors. So key feature of smaller firms is that we are more flexible and we are more entrepreneurial. And the implication here is, can we achieve the same in larger organization? Can we pursue what we define as a disaggregation of larger organization, meaning that we will create new smaller units in larger organization, and in these smaller units, after accomplishing the disaggregation, then we will be able to embed some of this more entrepreneurial culture and entrepreneurial behavior. So this leads to an analysis of a different structural dimension of a firm. So we have a first structural differentiation of a firm, which is the difference between formalization and spontaneous activity in the firm. So formalization means that in the firm there are many protocols, procedures that have been documented, So most of the processes, the workflows that you use in the organizations have been documented, and these serve as prompts, guidelines for employees to follow what the managers, what the executives would like to achieve. So high degree of formalization can be, of course, positive for the organization because we give a better guidance to the employees, but at the same time it can make the firm more rigid and can stifle innovation, meaning innovation will be suppressed, will be suffocated. Another important concept to keep in mind is difference between standardization in the firm and innovation, creativity. So especially for firms that would like to execute their innovation strategy, they do need some degree of uniformization, of harmonization. And this is what we define as standardization, meaning that there will be like standard processes, there will be standard documents, there will be even like standardization in terms of, for example, production process. So as long as you have a good standardization, you ensure also that your processes, for example, your production, are efficient. You also ensure that your quality is up to the standards. But again, here, the drawback is that a high degree of standardization, again, may decrease the level of innovation in the firm. One more concept to analyze is whether a firm is centralized, whether the decision-making, the R&D, so all the research and development activities are centralized or are more decentralized. So under this concept of centralization, we can identify the authority, centralized authority, meaning decision-making authority, for example, the headquarters of the organization, where most of the executives are based. These ensure that there is a clear direction for the organization. It also ensures that the organization can make decisions faster, because if you decentralize many decisions, then the decision-making process will take longer time, but when you centralize the decision, then the decision will be to an extent faster. On the other side, there are different studies that analyze, that emphasize the importance of decentralization and how decentralization can have also benefits. Benefits that consist, for example, on understanding the local markets better, or understanding a division of a firm better. Decentralization can also lead to more innovation, because each division of your organization can come up with a new strategy and a new innovation, new product development, and this consequently will result in a higher degree of innovation. At the same time, decentralization generally means that employees are more empowered. So they are more empowered to make decision even at lower levels. So this is a so-called like bottom-up decision-making in the organization, and consequently more empowered employees can make better decisions. So at the end of the day, it's difficult to decide whether a company should be more centralized or decentralized in terms of decision-making and research and development activities. So we can find pros and cons for both options. So, and we need to consider carefully the nature of our organization. For example, if we have high talented, high skilled employees, so in that case we can move towards more decentralization, because we can rely on empowering our employees, and we know that this can lead to positive outcome. But if we don't have this type of employees, so in that case we will try to centralize more decision making, because we know that employees can't step up or also depends on the industry or the product. So in some cases, we need to ensure higher degree of consistency in our new product development, and thereby we would prefer to centralize. But in other cases, we may need to come up with innovation specifically for a market. And when we do so, then we may prefer more decentralization. Some examples. A drug manufacturer, a pharmaceutical company, this is an industry that requires massive investments for new product development. In general, all the pharma companies are large companies. So in this case, we would prefer centralized research and development and centralized decision making, because we could not afford to have decentralized decision making. And on top of this, a centralized R&D is actually enough, because then a medicine with limited modification can be sold everywhere in the world. We just seen this in the case of vaccines and other treatment against the novel coronavirus. So this vaccine have been produced in America, in Germany, in China, and then as soon as they got regulatory approval from the other countries, they have been sold worldwide without any modification. However, in other industries, there are different dynamics. Take, for example, consumer goods, fast-moving consumer goods, companies like Unilever, for example. So in this case, you may need more decentralized R&D for two reasons. Well, first of all, because here the investments are actually smaller, and thereby it's financially sustainable to have multiple R&D centers. But at the same time, here market trends, market dynamics, consumer behavior patterns are so much more important. And so a shampoo or a cosmetic cream that is successful in Thailand would not succeed in the West. The famous whitening creams that are very popular for Asian cosmetics would not have any market in the West. So these are all examples on how a fast-moving consumer goods or cosmetic companies, we really need to localize more their R&D capabilities. This is a visualization of a centralized and decentralized approach. So a centralized approach means that the R&D will be located in the headquarters, whilst in the decentralized approach, each division of a firm, even in other markets, will have their own R&D. So this is a plastic visualization on the fact that if you centralize the R&D, you have economy of scale, you will have the learning curve, you can minimize the investment cost, and you can also reduce duplicates, redundancies, and so on. In the other case, you are serving your customer better, you have more proximity with your customers, but it will be more challenging to share knowledge within the organization, and also will be more challenging to avoid redundancies, avoid duplicates. It could be that some of your divisions are working on the very same new product development, the very same innovation, without sharing with other division in the organization. Case in point is a very famous firm, 3M. So this is the second case that we analyze in this lecture. So 3M originally in early 20th century, because it's a legacy firm with over 100 years of history. So this was a very decentralized company at the very beginning, and was a very entrepreneurial company, encouraging people to have this entrepreneurial behavior, individualistic behavior, and to create new innovation. 3M, even back in the days in the first decades of 20th century, they gave time off to employees to work on their own project, and then potentially this project could become part of organization projects. And there was also this grow and divide philosophy from the Latin saying divide et impera, grow and divide. So basically to divide the organization in smaller units, and then these units could even be competing against each other to come up with new product development. So they were incentivized to come up with new product development. And this went on for a long period of time, almost 70 years, when in the 80s, a new CEO tried to consolidate all these divisions, 42 divisions, into 10 groups and 4 business sectors. And he also divided the R&D into this 3 tiers system with a center research, labs for core technology, and then labs for each division. And even more so in late 80s, early 90s, Jack Jacobson, the new CEO, tried to implement even more discipline within the organization. But this eventually fired back, because when the employees felt like 3M was losing its soul. The soul of the company was to promote, to push for new innovations, and it was not happening any longer. So then in the 90s, the new CEO, Desi Desimon, tried to bring back some of this more entrepreneurial approach and to increase decentralization. However, this was possible after the 2 prior CEOs at the helm of the company, Luller and Jake Jacobson, increased the discipline and enacted more standardization. So we get back to a prior point on the importance of standardization and the importance of formalization. So to have process documentation to guide the employees. And so at this point, it was again possible to give more independence to employees, provided that the guidelines were already in place, and so there was more consistency, more cohesion between the top of the organization and bottom of the organization and all the scientists in 3M. A third topic to analyze when it comes to the structure of an organization is this differentiation between mechanistic and organic structure. So what is a mechanistic structure? So this is a structure which results from a high level of formalization, a lot of documentation, and high level of standardization. This is a good organization when your objective is operational excellence. Case in point, Dell. Dell Computer was able to achieve a very high level of operational excellence, and thus they focus on a mechanistic structure because they wanted to increase the efficiency, the reliability, the quality control, and so on. But again, this will lead to a minimization of any variation, and again, we can stifle the creativity, we can stifle the innovation. A different approach is an organic structure. Organic structure doesn't have so much formalization, doesn't have so much standardization. It's more of free flow. There are no fixed roles in the organization. So it could even be that people can take on the job that they like, depending on their interest, their achievement, their purpose, and so on. So this is again an example of a more creative, more innovative type of organization that encourage experimentation. This is good when you're doing new product development. It's not that good when you would like to manufacture a new innovation, because manufacturing requires to have a more consistent and reliable approach. So what we have seen so far is that size, structure are important, but probably what we really need to focus on is the role of a structure. So because to an extent we can recreate, even in larger organization or in smaller organization, some of the characteristic of the structure that we analyzed so far. So probably what we should try to focus more is how we can make large organization more innovative, or how can we ensure more reliability and consistency in smaller organization. So we can work more on the level of structure rather than size, because we can modify the size. If a company is big, we can downsize the company, or if a company is a startup, again, we cannot make it become as a Fortune 500 company, but we can adjust the structure to try to tackle possible weaknesses of each size, the weaknesses of large organization or the weaknesses of small organization. How can we do so? Well, a solution to this is to use this ambidextrous organization. So ambidextrous organization means that we try to combine the key benefits of a large organization with the key benefits of a smaller organization. So, for example, some division of a company can be more organic, more agile, more entrepreneurial. Other division of a company where we want to ensure quality, efficiency, can be more mechanistic. We can also try to combine these different culture, try to blend them in the organization. An example of this is to use the so-called skunk works. So this comes from military experience, but now it's adopted also by companies, which means to use more isolated units, because we do not want them to share what they're working on, the new innovations, because otherwise then these will lead to a very fast standardization. So we prefer to let them work in an isolated, autonomous setup without too much communication with the other units of the organization, precisely because we want to create a more disruptive culture. We have an example of this coming from Apple, the early stage of Apple in the 80s. So at that time, Apple was a computer producer, but they wanted to innovate and they wanted to create, specifically Steve Jobs wanted to create a new computer, new personal computer that could appeal to non-tech people. So back in the 80s, most of the people using computer were, let's say, what we would define jokingly nerds. So people with active interest in technology. But he didn't want this. He didn't want to create a computer for anyone. But to do so, he felt like Apple was not the right place. So he created a smaller unit of Apple, the Macintosh. And here there was a really renegade type of culture. So sort of like a lone rider, a cowboy kind of culture. Very independent, very isolated. He also used to bring people to some company outing in isolated places because he really wanted them to feel that way. In here, so the implication is that when we want to create this type of innovation, we also need to create a culture that can promote this type of innovation. I'm sure that none of you use a Macintosh, most likely, because it's a device that was popular in the late 80s, early 90s. I did have a luck to have one when I was a kid, and honestly, it really was easy to use. So this was our family PC at home, and it was really easy to use. I mean, didn't need really so much explanation background. As a kid, when I was 3-4 years old, I was able to use that PC because all the work done by Apple to make it really user friendly, even for people without any technology background at all. There are also other methodologies that can be utilized to create this ambidextrous organization. So, for example, some companies, HP, Motorola, and so on, they are able to create a sort of tension between some sort of standardization and formalization, so documentation, and a more innovative culture. So they intentionally create this uncomfortable tension in the organization to keep both ways. Another way to do so is to create task forces in the organization. So that will go beyond the typical hierarchy, the typical reporting structure in the organization, because a task force, as the name says, it's focused on a task, on a project. And there are people coming from different departments, divisions, with different backgrounds working to tackle a specific task, a specific project. This is again a way to cross-pollinate, to share knowledge, to promote innovations without much rigidity, because a task force, everyone is equal. There is no rigid structure in a task force. There are a few more examples of good structure that can be utilized to make organization more innovative. So what are these structures? One is the modular structure. A modular structure means that you create your products based on modules, based on modularity. So generally you will have a shared platforms for all of your products, and then it will be easy to combine the products in the platform. So there are many examples of this. The furniture manufacturer IKEA is one of them. So they have high level of standardization with modularity. So they share many components that come from the same platform. In automotive, this is also very much adopted because it allows you to reduce the cost of investment. So car makers create a platform, a shared platform, and then they will create different models based on a shared platform. And this allows you also to mix and match between your different models. To an extent, modularity is a good combination of standardization on one hand and customization on the other hand. Again, think of IKEA. IKEA is highly standardized, but it is also highly customizable because you can mix and match different items from IKEA. You can kind of create a almost tailor-made furniture for your home. And this is the key point of modularity, to ensure that you have both efficiency coming from standardization, but also the creativity and the customer focus that only customization can give to your customers. And this is also a good way to lock in the customers in your product offering. So to let the customer feel like you are able to really serve the customer better. Another example is what we call loosely coupled organizational structures. So a loosely coupled organizational structure are not modular structure, but are structure that also, thanks to the adoption of information technology, can cooperate across different divisions, or can even cooperate across different organizations. For example, to cooperate with your suppliers to come up with a new product development, and with IT capabilities that ensure that you can communicate with your suppliers in time. So here we are basically in the perspective of a more network approach. So a network of firms that develop innovations together. And of course, here the key challenge is to ensure an appropriate coordination. What is the example that we can see the application of a loosely coupled approach is from Boeing. So Boeing is one of the two leading aerospace companies together with Airbus. Boeing is American, Airbus is a French company. Boeing produced many famous aircraft, the 747, the 777 and so on, but for a period of time it seemed like Boeing was not able to come up with any strong innovation until they introduced this new model, the 787. So there are many innovations in the 787. One innovation is in components, because they use primarily carbon fiber. It makes the aircraft lighter and so consuming less fuel. They adopted modularity in the production process, and also they shifted to a loosely coupled approach, meaning that they use a more network approach in producing this aircraft. So they partner with many suppliers, for example, Mitsubishi and Kawasaki and Fuji in Japan, with Saab and Alenia Aeronautica from Europe, and basically 70% of the components of a 787 were produced by suppliers. And this was for many reasons. One, of course, to reduce the cost. The other one was to tap on the specific expertise and capabilities of the suppliers. And the final one is that many governments encourage aerospace as a crucial industry for their economies, and of course they give some benefits in case you engage suppliers from other countries like Japan or Europe, and then at the end of the day that Boeing would not be actually made in America, but will be made in America, Japan, Europe, and so on, and consequently you can also get some incentives, many fiscal incentives, and so on, by Japanese government, by European Commission, or national governments in the European Union. So all of these basically were the perks of a loosely coupled approach adopted by Boeing. However, on the other hand, there was a challenge in the coordination. So there were many delays, and also the delivery to the clients was actually delayed because of these coordination challenges by Boeing. The last point that we need to examine when we study the structure of an organization is the dimension, the multinational dimension of an organization. Because here again we see this hiatus between centralization and decentralization. So how can we adopt a structure that internationally can be effective? So here, of course, there are many more challenges to address. The challenge of local market customization, the challenge of knowledge sharing within the organization. It's already difficult to share knowledge among different departments in the headquarters. Imagine sharing knowledge, expertise between different units in different countries with time zone difference, space difference, culture difference, and so on. And also the so-called not invented here syndrome, meaning that many business units in international markets may feel like they don't want to implement solutions coming from the headquarters because they feel like these are not suited for the local market. So we have some best practices to address this. Basically, there are 4 strategies to enhance multinational innovation. So the first one is the so-called Center for Global. Center of Global means that all innovations are conducted in a central hub, and all innovation are diffused through the company. So here we have many perks: coordination, economy of scale, no redundancy, standardization, and so on. But at the same time, we may actually discourage radical innovation. So maybe we just come up with some incremental innovation, but we do not create radical discontinuous innovations, because also we lack the connection with markets. And we know that markets, consumers, are a source of innovation. The second strategy that we can adopt is local for local. So local for local means that each division have their own R&D market. So in this case, we have like access to many different resources, we can customize, but again, we don't have standardization, we may have redundancy, we don't have any economy of scale, so also here we see quite a few drawbacks. And then there are 2 strategies which are somewhat in between. So what are these 2 strategies? So one is the locally leveraged strategy. So this is a strategy when each division have their own R&D. However, the firm with some knowledge sharing meetings with a brand liaison in the company try to leverage and spread the most creative ideas across the company. So in this case, we have all the advantages of local for local in terms of resources, creativity, and so on, but at the same time, we can share what each market accomplished. The second hybrid option is the so-called globally linked. Globally linked means that we have a decentralized research and development, but each unit in each market will have a different role in our innovation management. So in this case, again, we have like diversity, we have proximity to the markets, but we avoid to have redundancy, and we still can promote some sort of like standardization and efficiency. So one example to clarify the difference between globally linked and locally leveraged. So locally leveraged means that imagine a company that is producing instant noodles and cookies and some other snacks. So in a locally leveraged strategy, each country will have an R&D department promoting new innovations, new product development for instant noodles, cookies, and snacks. However, in the globally linked, there will be some sort of more higher, more robust coordination from the headquarters, and so we will assign to a market to focus on R&D in instant noodle, another market to focus on R&D in cookies, and the third market to focus on R&D in other snacks. So that's the difference. In locally leveraged, we only have some sharing of best practices, new innovations. But in globally linked, we have a more coordinating, more organized approach to innovation management, but still we ensure that creativity and new innovations are promoted within the organization. The final point to remember when we manage innovation across borders is the so-called transnational approach, meaning that in a multinational company, we should leverage on the diverse set of skills in the different market opportunities. So we should try to connect as much as we can these different units in the company. A way to do this, which is very effective, this is the way that Ericsson utilizes, is through rotational mechanism, meaning that we send people from headquarters in other markets, people from other markets may go to the headquarters. So via this rotation, we ensure that we share ideas, we share information, we share new innovation, we share best practices, and we also create a more diverse and truly multinational culture, values across the organization. So to recap on what we studied today, so first we asked, what is the impact of a size in the structure on innovation management? And the answer is that a large company can be innovative, or in some cases might not be innovative. And small companies can be innovative, but in some other cases might not be enough innovative or might not be efficient at innovation. And so here the consequence is that we should focus on the structure, because we know from studies what are the most appropriate structure that we can deploy to ensure that companies are really innovative. And so we studied about centralizations versus decentralization. We studied about the degree of formalization, the degree of standardization. We studied about ambidextrous organization. So all of these are key best practices that we can blend together. So basically the key outcome of this video lecture is that we should try to come up with hybrid strategies, hybrid implementation, blending in different elements, documentation versus agility, standardization versus creativity, centralization versus decentralization. So we should really make an effort to identify hybrid solutions that can make both large and small organizations truly entrepreneurial and innovative, but at the same time able to exploit efficiently and effectively the new products that they developed. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video. Bye!